in the spring of the year that I believe I had passed 14 and was pushing 15, but it could have been a year later. Anyway, my mother was diagnosed in February with cancer, which was rather ironic since many years later in February I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Hers was in her left breast, mine was in my right breast. And in those days, they didn't have any of the sophisticated treatments that they have now. So mother was promptly taken to Riverside Hospital in Paducah, which no longer exists, where she had her left breast removed. Now, mother was a 36 double D, so removing her breast was quite an operation. And in those days, they didn't take you to the recovery room or anything. They brought you back to the room, and your family were there waiting for you. Mother came back, and I know this was when I was 14, so maybe the chickens were too. Anyway, they gave me a bowl and a wash rag and told me to bathe my mother's face while she came to. And they went away. And my dad and my mother were there, and my brother was not, and I don't know why. But mother was moaning and trying to come around, and she rolled over her head and breathed that ether smell on me, and I promptly fell on the floor in a dead faint. And so they decided maybe they better have a nurse to take care of mother. Anyway, she was very ill for many months, and they used what they called cobalt in those days that burned her horribly and debilitated her in such an extent that it was a good 2 years before she began to get her strength back. Well, as luck would have had it, in that spring, a week or so before her diagnosis, we had ordered and been delivered at least 150 to 175 baby chickens, which Dad fed and put in the brooder house and everything. But without Mother's steadying hand and taking care of them, they were as wild as any chickens ever were, and they roosted in the trees and did everything they wanted to, pooped on everything, and I hated them, but they were chickens.
So if she'd been there, she would have known how to keep them in the brooder house.
She would have known how. Mama had this magic touch with all kinds of animals. Chickens, goats, it didn't matter what. She could control them. Don't ask me why. Nevertheless, when they were the appropriate age to turn into meat, as in frying chickens, baking chickens, boiling chickens, broiling chickens, Dad said, well, your mother is certainly not able to process those chickens, so I guess I better start catching them up and selling them. And I said, but Dad, what will we do for chicken this winter? We eat chicken a couple of times a week. He said, I guess we'll just have to do without. And so I thought it over. And I said, Dad, I've watched Mama, and I think I can do it. You think you can kill and process and all those chickens? I think I can do that, Dad. So Mrs. Ada Burgess, whom you've heard me speak about as the preacher, came up to supervise. She was too old to do the work, and she was crippled up with arthritis. But the first chicken I caught, I attempted to do what I had seen Mother do, which was wring its neck. Well, I did succeed after a while of wringing its neck, but it turned out it was a rooster with a spur about that long, and it cut me down that arm about 4 inches, which she had to wrap up, and she said, well, we better not do it that way. So the next time I caught a chicken, I tried to chop its head off with Dad's old double-edged axe. Well, as it turned out, I wasn't strong enough to hold the chicken and the axe and accurate enough to chop it, so that didn't work out very well either. Dad had built a fire in a big black pot over in front of the old garden gate, and that's where I was putting the chickens to get them scalded. And Mrs. Burgess said, well, honey, there's another way. It's not pretty, but it works, and you can do it. She said, now you go down to the barn and you get a tobacco stick. And I said, what am I going to do? Hit him in the head? She said, no, you come back here and I will show you how to do it. She said, now you put that tobacco stick on the ground and you catch your chicken. and you put your right foot on one end of it, and you leave the left end of it loose. You take that chicken by its feet, and you run its neck under that tobacco stick, and then you put your left foot on the other end of the tobacco stick, holding it by its feet. You pull, and its head will pop off. She said, now blood will splatter on you. It did. But using that method, I managed to catch, kill, scald, pluck, gut, wash, clean, cut up, and process in the vicinity of 110 chickens. It took me a week. And the crux of it was that by this time I was old enough to do the family cooking. So I had to cook those chickens. But I couldn't eat one bite of chicken. Every time I smelled raw chicken, my stomach started to roll and to heave. And I would make dinner and serve it to my family. And I ate lots of mashed potatoes and lots of green beans and black-eyed peas and everything else. But on the nights when we were to have chicken, I didn't eat any chicken.
And you wanted the chicken because you didn't want to miss it all winter long, but then you ended up missing it anyway.
I wanted the chicken to feed my family, but I just couldn't eat it. And if